Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto desired femme Itachi and claimed her for his harem, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto's feet landed gracefully on the grassy moist floor of the training ground. The 17-year-old was practicing the effectiveness of his ninjutsu, the Rasenshuriken. And if the magnificent crater was anything to judge by, it was defiantly effective. The young Junin, achieving said promotion little under 6 months prior, assessed the damage with a small grin. It was perfect, and when combined with natural energy via Sage Mode, said attack's effectiveness and usability in battle would increase tenfold. He smirked and scratched his head dumbly. The whole entire training grounds destroyed. Ba-chan wouldn't be to zero pleased to learn that he did it again. Despite the fact that it wasn't that huge of an issue. He shrugged it off as he gazed up at the fading blue sky. It was getting dark and he should probably get home. Or maybe he could stop by the hospital to greet Sakura for a second. He quickly dismissed that thought. She was probably super busy with paperwork or some sort of surgery. Seeing Sasuke was defiantly out of the question, he didn't dare step into the Uchiha compound. And so the sun-bleached haired shinobi decided it would be in his best interest to head home. A shiver ran down his spine. He didn't exactly know why, but for a split second it felt as if someone was watching him. He shrugged the thought off. He was probably simply just tired. He yawned before grabbing his bag and quickly stretching. He took off, performing the body flicker technique, disappearing in a puff of smoke and landing neatly on a roof a small distance away from his apartment. The young shinobi dropped to the ground. Busy streets of the evening city. He decided to walk the rest of the way, take in the scenery of the village he came to love. He walked, his face full of joy and glee. Many villagers greeted him politely as he passed by. "Good afternoon, Naruto," one villager greeted him. He smiled at the man, responding with a greeting of his own. He's come to gain the trust of the villagers and its inhabitants since the years coming up. Team 7 making a name for themselves throughout the shinobi world, with their huge achievements which consisted of capturing Kabuto, to killing wanted members of the Akatsuki organization. Naruto took a left turn from the main road and headed down his less than busy street. Actually, if you think about it, it was actually pretty empty. Which wasn't weird at all, until his keen eyes picked up on very fast movement from their corners. He turned towards the shadows, of which he knew he saw movement. And there it was again, the shiver. The feeling of being watched. He continued to walk, wishing that he was just being super paranoid. His apartment mere feet away. He knew better to trust his instincts. And his instincts were telling him someone or something was watching him. Just to be safe, the shinobi quickly activated his natural chakra, locating the position of said thing. His toad-like eyes narrowed. He picked up on multiple signatures, but what stood out the most was the fact that someone was trying to keep theirs concealed. If that were true, then that also made his latter thoughts also true. A dark figure took to the sky, dashing on the rooftops full speed. Naruto's hypothesis seemed to be correct. Someone had indeed been spying on him. He took to the rooftops, dashing towards the figure, giving chase. "Hey, stop," he called. He was curious as to what business this person had with him. It was rather suspicious. Who the hell was this guy? He caught up with the figure, clad in Anbu uniform and a mask. They still didn't trust him. Both ran parallel from each other, jumping from the rooftops at the same pace. "I think you have some explaining to do," he growled. The Anbu didn't respond with words, but a swift and dead accurate kunai aimed for Naruto's face. He dodged the metal as it grazed the hair on his side, barely missing the side of his face. This was serious. Here he was challenging an Anbu agent. The best of the best. Rational thought told him to stop and head back home, but something else. Curiosity possibly told him to keep chase and find out who, what, and why. Naruto withdrew two kunai from his pouch and shot them in the Anbu's direction. It quickly withdrew its katana, deflecting the weapons before stopping on a roof opposite Naruto. He stopped too, staring the shinobi down. Alright, then. Naruto began towards the Anbu. What business exactly do you have spying on me today? His eyes rolled up and down the Anbu agent, taking its appearance. From what he could tell, the figure was a slender, tall female with long flowing jet black hair. Her facial features completely covered by that of her Anbu mask. Naruto made the first move, his kunai slashing at the female Anbu. She slid back, successfully avoiding his attack. This would be a fight without ninjutsu, else he wanted to damage the village and get into any more trouble than he probably already was. She retaliated with her katana, quickly slashing at Naruto, who blocked her barrage of attacks with his kunai, before sending a kick to the shinobi's chest. She fell back, performing a back flip before recovering. Naruto rushed her with a barrage of swift and carefully thrown fists, none of which actually connecting with the girl, and he soon found his arm being caught by the girl. Shit! He muttered as she slammed him into the hard concrete of the rooftop. Katana dangerously close to his face, as her foot forcefully pinned his back to the ground. I expected more from a member of Team 7. She spoke for the first time. The feminine voice spoke, sending shivers down Naruto's spine. He was holding back, of course. Bastard, you have no idea what you're talking about. He recognized it from somewhere, but he just couldn't figure it out. Naruto pushed up, catching the female off guard, his physical strength proving to be superior to that of hers as he knocked her back. The kunoichi recovering instantly, but Naruto was fast on her kunai in hand. Now let's see who's under that mask. He swiped his weapon in an attempt to remove the mask. But the female shinobi was quick and caught his wrist. She instantly sent a kick into his stomach, causing him to be pushed inches backward. He was quick on his feet. But as soon as he recovered, he was met by a katana stabbing straight into his arm. He felt the blood spill from his open wound. She was close enough. He quickly grabbed at the mask, tugging at it with lightning swift speed. He removed it. Was it that hard to realize? Are you satisfied now? She spoke, removing the weapon from his arm and backing away from the bleeding shinobi. Her face utterly unfazed by the removal of the mask. He held onto his wounded arm, narrowing his eyes. She was just stunning. Her face was pale and seemed to be flawless. Her charcoal black eyes complemented her black hair. He knew her from somewhere, but he couldn't exactly put his finger on it. You must not recognize me, Oh well, this was pointless then. He remained still, memorized, as she disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving a bleeding Naruto in the middle of the Leaf Village. Shit, what the hell? Naruto inquired, gazing at his bleeding arm. You're an idiot, you know that. Yeah, I know. Naruto sat rather contently in Sakura's apartment living room. Luckily her shift had ended little under 30 minutes ago, or else he would have had to ran all the way towards the hospital while bleeding out. You don't just go around attacking random shinobi. Sakura scolded Naruto, as she forced her green chakra into his arm. She could have killed you. Hell, you could have bled out. What were you thinking? Naruto shook his head. I was just curious. Didn't I tell you she was spying on me? No shit. That's what they do. That's their job. They're always watching us. That's just how it is, she spat. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Well, now that you say it like that, it was kind of idiotic. You're hopeless. Do you know how much trouble you could get in for getting in their way? Said Sakura. But she was absolutely beautiful, so I consider that a win in my book. Sakura shook her head, obviously not wanting to press the conversation further. He chuckled a bit, rubbing the back of his head dumbly. I wouldn't mind meeting her again, actually. The moon shined brightly, its reflected rays the only visible light in the dark atmosphere of the sleeping village. Returning home from a previous mission, Izumi couldn't help but feel a small flame of joy burn within the inners of her chest and tummy. It was slight joy to say the most. She didn't exactly enjoy killing people, considering her passive-aggressive ideology, but it was what was required of the clan heir. To tell the truth, she'd much rather be on her usual duty, which was the main priority at the moment. Her team was needed though from time to time. Anbu Team 1, which consisted of Shisui, Neji, Shizune as their medic and, of course, Izumi the respective captain. Their mission was a simple assassination of a drug lord whose influence was increasing to sizes that were of a considerable threat to the general public. Especially since his money and manipulative nature enabled him to hire high-end shinobi of A rank or higher. To say the least, Izumi had underestimated the difficulty of the mission, and thus, the stealth aspect of it was a flunk. But despite said flunk, there were no considerable injuries to the team. Except for a small slash across Shisui's face, but it was little to nothing but a flesh wound. So, in the end, the mission was a success. The drug lord had been killed thanks to a heart injury via Shisui and his notorious and abnormally quick body flicker technique. Izumi had dismissed the two non-Uchiha members of the team, leaving her and Shisui to report the mission results to the Hokage. Both their paces slowed considerably as they approached the Gadaim's office. She felt the familiar chakra signature of the Hokage herself. The Anbu captain's eyes narrowed, as she sensed two more familiar signatures. Shisui glanced at Izumi. A small, almost inaudible chuckle was released from his chest. As if he found something amusing. She ignored it though she had a much larger question. What were those two doing at a time like this? Was it earlier than her first preconception? She found herself on the small edge of the Hokage's window, it being open like usual. She entered, followed by a more than obviously giddy Shisui. Unprofessional. That's what it is, unprofessional. The fifth Hokage yelled in anger, her blonde hair slashing viscously as she pointed her finger scolding the two shinobi. What in the made you two think it'd be a good idea to have one of your rival battles, while you're supposed to be escorting the daimyo's daughter? What stupid magical thoughts go through your thick heads that tell you that that was the most appropriate time to test each other's abilities? The two Junin stood ridged. You know it was more of an impulse than a thought, Ba-chan. The blonde known as Naruto spoke in his defense, scratching the back of his head while doing so. Like he always did when he was embarrassed. Just be quiet, responded an aggravated Sasuke. The three shinobi obviously not noticing the two Anbu operatives as she entered. Both Izumi and her cousin Shisui watched the exchange between the two members of Team 7, with curiosity. The latter of which seemed to be getting a really good kick out of said situation. Not only did you successfully ruin any chances of Leaf Village shinobi escorting her again, but you also managed to burn down their entire vacation home down completely. She paused, her eyes darting dangerously at the pair. And guess whose paycheck that's coming out of? Both ninja gulped at this, she noted. It was quite amusing watching the two members of one of the most elite Junin teams gaze on in complete angst. That's only the beginning of your punishment, Tsunade growled. Ah, come on Ba-chan. She silenced the blonde 17-year-old Junin with a finger. 6 months of all D-ranked missions. And both of you are getting revoked of your Junin rank. For 6 months. Naruto's jaw fell to the floor while a certain little brother held his head low. Shisui let out a brash and loud chuckle. The noise caused the blonde-haired Gadaime to turn her head towards the window, now noticing the jet black-haired Anbu captain and an amused Shisui in all their glory. Sasuke's eyes landed on her masked hidden features. From the look on his face, not only was he embarrassed but he also seemed to realize she was behind the mask. He lowered his head further in disgrace. Azumi's eye landed on that of the blonde. His face filled with an expression she couldn't exactly read. However, one thing was for certain, he too had recognized her. Wait, that's, the yellow-haired ninja began, but was swiftly silenced by his teammate, who of which whispered something that was inaudible to Izumi. He was a strange specimen, that was for sure. Shisui, what a pleasant surprise, Tsunade said sarcastically. And Izumi-san. She watched as Naruto's eyes went wide at the mention of her name. The Anbu captain raised an eyebrow in response, before deeming that matter of little importance. Izumi removed her mask, as she chose to ignore the blonde shinobi. How ironic. Oh, come on Hokage-sama. What's the point of the mask if you're just going to say my name? The Genjutsu master replied, removing his mask, exposing his bright grin. Most Anbu don't chuckle before entering my office. Also, try and break that habit of entering through my damn window, she retorted. Well then, don't leave it open. Shisui spoke confidently, grin from eye to eye. This was normal behavior for the giddy Uchiha, of which only he could get away with. One could consider it disrespectful, but it was Shisui and everyone knew that he was different. Don't get Izumi wrong, he was loyal, powerful and infamously known throughout the shinobi world. The fifth Hokage glared at him but chose not to respond. Her honey eyes trailing that of both Izumi and Shisui before glaring lethally at Sasuke and Naruto. 6 months of mandatory training, headed by both Izumi and Shisui, Tsunade declared. Neither Naruto nor Sasuke responded to this surprisingly. Sasuke simply gazed at both his cousin and sister respectively before returning to that of their Hokage. Naruto, on the other hand, had his eyes narrowed in her direction. He was glaring at her. Izumi gazed at his right arm. The wound was deep and probably required a certain amount of time to heal. That was apparent considering that he still had it in bandages. It must have taken him a while to put 2 and 2 together. 2 and 2 being that she was an Uchiha, and more importantly, the elder sister of Sasuke. Maybe he put it together, maybe not. Wait, training. This is news to me. Since when? Shisui inquired. Tsunade was clearly annoyed. Since I decided, just now. I get to mold Sasuke-kun and his idiotic friend both mentally and physically for the next 6 months. He clasped his hands together. Yeah, hear that Izumi. The female Anbu captain chose to ignore said question. Will we still receive missions within that time period? Consider this a mission. But, yes, you'll still get pulled away for a mission every so often. Izumi simply nodded in response. This is effective immediately. Now, you two out, she pointed at Naruto and Sasuke, before turning her finger to both Shisui and Izumi. Report. Do you guys have to wake me up at godly late hours of the night when you wish to speak about your issues? Came the irritated voice of a certain Rosette. Both Naruto and Sasuke gazed at Sakura. It's sort of important, seeing that we can't go on any missions together for 6 months, Sakura, said a displeased Naruto who sat parallel to an equally displeased Sasuke. Well, that's both you idiots' fault, isn't it? Sakura yawned. Came the Uchiha's signature response. We have mandatory training for 6 months on top of the other shitty punishments. His eyes went to the floor as the thought of the Anbu agent suddenly made itself present. He had been such an oblivious idiotic doby. How didn't he recognize her? He'd seen her before, hell on more than one occasion. Albeit, in his defense, it was a few years ago. But regardless, he was an idiot. Sasuke's sister Izumi. It was her, that was the Anbu that had been watching him. Stalking. He wondered. Why? What had he done exactly? Was it an order by the Hokage or did she do it on a whim? His curiosity in the situation skyrocketing to unimaginable levels. He would find out soon enough, one way or another. After all, she was in charge of one of his punishments. He had to admit that she was way more beautiful when under direct light. With both my sister and cousin, Sasuke finally spoke. Naruto, do you understand what this means? Naruto shook himself from his thoughts. Oh, nah. They're going to kill us. You have a minute to get the out of your bed or your brains hit the wall. Came the dry, unnaturally serious tone of a certain black spiky-haired Anbu. His katana mere slightly pressing the side of his face. Naruto gulped, the drowsiness no longer present, for good reason too. Shisui Uchiha of the body flicker was his title. He was greatly known throughout the shinobi world. His powers and effectiveness in battle clearly indicated his superiority to that of Naruto's. Anbu Team 1 had completed the most missions after all. Alright, damn, interrupting my sleep, threatening me and all this bullshit, came the aggravated mutter of said Uzumaki. The katana ignited, flames devouring it. Naruto felt the heat emanating onto his face. He instantly reacted by grabbing a hidden dagger hidden within his sleeping wear, slashing the flaming weapon from his persona. The weapon remained in Shisui's hand, Naruto's attempts in vain. Alright, pass the dagger. The body flicker master held out his left hand while his flamed katana was still in his the right, ever so close. What did you think you were getting out if attacking your superior exactly? Bastard. Came the blonde's reply as he tossed the dagger lightly towards a threatening Shisui. Now, as I recall, a certain blonde-haired, large, easily angered Hokage order you and Sasuke-kun both to be put under our wing as per punishment, he began. Naruto noticing a small grin through the dark early morning of his apartment. Which reminded him. I know, but can't we do this like? He gazed at the clock beside his bed. It read 3:25 a.m. Later. No, shit, we're doing this now. But, I literally only got 1 hour of sleep, the blonde retorted. An hour and 17 minutes to be precise. He concluded, remembering the time in which he returned from Sakura's house as opposed to the time now. Either get the hell up, or I promise you I'll slice you into small chips. Shisui's ultimatum and the dangerously close flaming sword were enough to convince the young Junin to comply. He nodded at the Anbu, submitting to his will. Now, we're about 13 minutes off schedule, thanks to your insubordination, he spoke, flaming disappearing slowly. Go get dressed, and meet us in training ground 14. Don't waste any more time than you've done already. There was nothing more said before Shisui vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto grunted. He hadn't expected the punishment to begin so early. He was rather annoyed, irritated actually, and sleep deprived. But not only that, but also curious. He took off, not wanting to waste more time, heeding Shisui's warning. Dark chocolate eyes fell softly upon the two shinobi before them. Little brother and Naruto respectively, in that order. Both of them stood still and at attention as Shisui successfully chastised them, allowing his ranked over them to get the better. Izumi sighed, her eyes heavy as she felt old man consciousness slowly leaving the barracks of her mind. It had been roughly 48 hours since her last rest, and the sleep deprivation was beginning to take a toll on her. The mission had been longer than expected as stated prior. It would be worth it though, she was completing 2 missions at the same time. We have 110% control of both of you. Shit, we own both of you, 240%. For the next 6 months, I am your superior. For the next 6 months you will bow before me, you will not laugh, sleep, sneeze, nor will you eat without my permission. He was taking this very seriously, a small glare in his eyes that Izumi knew all too well. Do you two comprehend? Both Naruto and Sasuke hesitated, not understanding if he was joking or if he meant every aspect of his statement. I said, do you understand? His voice lowered in pitch and became much louder. Hi, now, mandatory training, He lifted his chin up in thought before turning towards Izumi. Izumi-chan, does 240 laps around the entire village seem okay? 240 laps, are you shitting me? A frantic Naruto spat, obviously having no control over his tongue. Why was he complaining? Team 7 has definitely run much longer distances. It does seem sort of light if you ask me, Shisui stated, glaring at the loud blonde. Izumi watched the two Junin. It was apparent that they had a certain distaste for the work they were about to be exposed to. She'd fix that, laziness wasn't acceptable. It seems like an acceptable routine, she spoke. Her eyes quickly found their way towards a certain blonde Jinchuriki. He was staring, she caught a glimpse of suspicion in his crystal blue orbs. And yet another look that she couldn't exactly put a finger on. It was strange and quickly become awkward. He broke away as soon as he realized she was glaring back. He obviously had questions. And if she knew him as well as she thought, he'd be more than willing to ask without hesitation. Alright, let's get to it, Anbu pace. We don't have time for that slow junk, the spiky-haired Uchiha cried, slamming his palms together in contentment. Move, move, get your running. Don't worry, we'll instruct by example. Come on, Sasuke-kun and friend. It's only been 240 laps and you're already on your knees huffing and puffing. Shisui scolded the two young male shinobi who to Izumi, seemed almost half dead. They weren't used to such exercise, that was obvious enough, especially considering that both Izumi and Shisui had barely broken a sweat. She wondered what type of exercises they did in the lower ranks. Anything below Anbu. It's impossible to do this at such a pace. Sasuke huffed, attempting to catch his breath. Yeah, how do you expect us to do it at such a quick pace? Naruto inquired. Are you high? You guys have gone on missions where you run at top speed for days upon days. Yeah, but that's a mission. It's necessary on a mission, cousin. Go. UUGH, they both replied. Dripping from head to toe in sweat, exhausted and aching. Naruto fell backward on the soft grass, laying with legs and arms widely spread out. Relief hitting him instantly as he rested his legs. Sasuke fell parallel beside the blonde, he glared at him from the corner of his eye. Blue and black eyes met. And with that simple glance, Naruto knew exactly what he was saying. How do we get ourselves in this mess? Alright, I'm impressed. I actually thought you two would have given up by the 170th lap. But you've pushed through. Awesome. Sasuke's cousin Shisui praised them, sitting down in a meditated pose, perpendicular to Sasuke's sister. He seemed genially pleased, albeit Naruto wasn't sure if it was because of their progress or his own sadistic gain. Izumi, on the other hand, seemed unchanged from the moment he first saw her today. Alright, well, Izumi-chan, I understand if you'd like to get little Sasuke-kun. So I'll get this idiot. Naruto tilted his head forwards towards the two resting Anbu. Excuse me. There's more, isn't there? Sasuke spoke irritably. Well, Izumi-chan thought it'd a great idea to evaluate you two's strength, and how awesome would it be to see how you two work under stress. Shisui gave both Naruto and Sasuke a huge wide grin that seemed to extend all the way towards his eyes. So Naruto looks slick. Actually, cousin, I'd like to evaluate Naruto-san, came the impassive voice of the other female present. Her eyes remained closed and her face lacking any type of expression. Naruto's eyes widened a bit. What could she possibly what? He knew it would be a great opportunity to get answers to his huge sum of questions. But what were her ulterior motives? Shisui's facial expression changed to that of surprise, awe even. He nodded before a sly smirk made its way prone onto his features. So, I get little Sasuke-kun, He clasped his hands together devilishly. This resulted in a certain Sasuke to gulp in response. Both Anbu brought themselves up to the ground and walked towards their respective foe. Shisui unleashed his katana, igniting. An inferno devours the sword. Izumi, on the other hand, took no action to grab her weapon. Naruto noted this. Underestimating me, he whispered the words only audible to himself. She was gonna hold back then. So would he. I'd get up if I were you too. We don't intend on showing mercy. The Genjutsu master, Shisui informed both members of Team 7. Naruto and Sasuke brought themselves to their feet. Don't get too overconfident, this won't be easy. Sasuke declared proudly towards his cousin, kunai finding its way to the Uchiha's palms. Naruto wondered if that was going to be the case, though he prayed it'd play close to that. We'll see about that. Mere moments after Shisui had finished his statement, he was on Sasuke, slashing at the younger Uchiha. Attacking violently and with great speed. He really was showing no remorse, which means. Izumi stood feet away from Naruto. His eyes narrowed as he prepared himself for an impending attack. She stood motionlessly and with a blank expression, her hands unmoving at her sides. She looked rather innocent if she asked Naruto, he delicate features making her look rather cute if you would. But Naruto knew better than to base assumptions off of appearances and preconceptions. Izumi was the top Anbu captain in the whole entire village, that spoke for itself. She was the best of the best, of the best. He refused to underestimate her, not this time at least. And it probably wouldn't hurt to try and get some answers in the process. Suddenly her right hand moved to her mouth, and without even a hand sign or any indication of her next actions, she released a huge blaze of fire from her mouth. Naruto's side slid away from the huge mass of fire. His hands grabbing two kunai from his pouch as he gained visual of his opponent. She stood in the same spot, despite the fact that she was now facing him. Naruto watched her feet, not chancing a look into her eyes. Even if she hadn't activated her Sharingan, which he knew she probably had, he didn't want to make any mistakes. He had to execute everything perfectly. She wasn't taking him seriously, he'd change that. He tossed his dual kunai at the female Anbu captain who of which in that instant released her katana before swiftly deflecting the deadly weapons. With this Naruto rushed forward, his hands coming together as he performed the hand signals to create his shadow clones. He only needed about 15. He summoned the shadow clones as they came upon Izumi. They attacked, fists attempting to hit the unnaturally quick female. She dodged barrages of kicks and punches from the clones, sending a few of her own successfully dispelling them. Naruto quickly summoned more, using them to gather wind chakra as he began to reform his signature Rasengan. Her back was towards him and he took his chance. He pounced forward leaving nothing to chance and he thrust his hands forward landing his attack on the Uchiha heir's back, and sending her flying, landing a short distance away. A smile of satisfaction fell upon Naruto, his eyes lighting up. It would do you better in the future, not to underestimate me, he yelled out as pride filled every fiber of his being. It all changed when he felt a chilling tickle go through his spine. He gazed back towards the spot where Izumi lay. His eyes widened. She was gone. He looked in all directions, left, right, up, down. Where had she gone off to? It didn't seem like a substitution nor did it look like a clone. In that instant, the sky turned black, and the sun a crimson red. Naruto choked out a cry as he found himself paralyzed. Not from fear, no by all means. But another force. Did you really think it'd be that easy, Naruto? A voice whispered, the voice obviously belonging to Izumi. Ah, Genjutsu, Naruto yelled in realization. He had little to no control over himself, his body was completely at her mercy. When? He cried out almost in anger. Her figure appeared before him, his body still frozen. From the moment you gazed into my Sharingan. But I didn't, or I don't remember. Effects of my genjutsu, it's expected. She spoke. I control every aspect of this world. She trailed off, her voice sweet, sending shivers down his entire body. Her slender figure clad in her Anbu captain attire approached the paralyzed Naruto who had now realized his position. That position unexpectedly being him bound to a cross. She came close, more close than Naruto felt comfortable with, not that he was comfortable, to begin with. He tried moving with every fiber of his being, as he felt his face heat up in embarrassment. Wrong place and wrong time. Izumi's stoic face was mere inches from Naruto's as she came closer. Naruto's heart rate shot up like a firework. She whispered softly into his ear. I expected more. If she expected more, then you know what, Naruto would do exactly that. His breath was heavy, his crimson-red eyes swore daggers into that of his elder cousin, both were tired and weary from their battle. Shisui stood, a small smile on his features. Sasuke couldn't exactly pinpoint what the smile meant, albeit he assumed to be of little importance. You seem to be faring much better than your blonde teammate, the spiked-haired Uchiha spoke. Let's finish this, shall we? He raised her hands up to gesturing for them to get back to business. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. If you would do the honor. The younger Uchiha needed not one more word. Within seconds, he was on the offensive. Sending a quick hurling Shisui's way, the Anbu operative barely was able to block his attack, which was followed by a heavy yet swift punch aimed for his face. Shisui sidestepped, being able to avoid the attack. Withdrawing a kunai from his pouch, he slashed at the Junin. Sasuke dodged the deadly attack, before revealing a kunai of his own, striking towards the elder Uchiha. The two kunai collided, creating a golden spark. He made a move to sweep Shisui off his feet with his legs. Shisui saw this and hurled into the air, his hands performing a quick set of signals. Sasuke's eyes widened as he realized his intentions. He jumped a few meters away, as a ball of fire plummeted towards the earth. He slid sideways on the grass, his hand giving him balance against the grass and dirt. "Behind you," a humorous voice whispered in his ear. Said whisperer had used the body flicker technique. Sasuke's eyes widened as he turned around with only seconds to block a devastating kick that sent him flying. He skidded across the grass before recovering and bringing himself to his feet. He stood preparing to charge forward and show what he was truly made of. He concentrated chakra towards his hand as electricity began to engulf his palm. However, suddenly, he found a sharp, piercing object against his neck. "Damn it. I think it's over, Sasuke." His Chidori slowly vanished, Shisui's figure behind that of Sasuke's kunai pressed comfortably towards his neck. There was no possible way he could escape. Sasuke was actually out of luck. There was literally nothing he could do, lest he wished to lose his life. I give. Sasuke declared through his teeth. Pretty impressive, Sasuke-kun. Though more protection towards your midsection would probably make you more effective. Izumi looked at the blonde. He wasn't moving much, or was he attempting to do anything? He simply just stood rigid. Was he as good as she had first believed? Was it simply a false preconception and nothing more, or was he still the knucklehead ninja that she'd perceived from childhood, till now? The one person, if anyone, had the true will of fire. Suddenly his crystal blue eyes shot open, a grin earning its way on his handsome features. A flame burning like a wildfire. Without warning, the genjutsu had been disrupted. Izumi found her Sharingan eyes widening in shock and disbelief. "You expect more, huh? Let's give these hands a try and see how much you actually expected," the blonde roared, as he threw a kwani her way. Her eyes narrowed. Was he underestimating her? Did he think a measly attack like that would be effective? Her hands jolted out with great speed, intercepting the kunai in her palms before it came into contact with the Uchiha air. Not the smartest of mauve, an object as hard as a rock came into contact with her face. Izumi soon realized this to be Naruto's fist. Shock shot through the Anbu captain. That was impossible. She dragged across the floor before finding balance and recovering to her feet. "It's one of my dad's techniques, the flying thunder god," came the blonde's reply. She wiped her face, a slither of blood removed from her features. This changed the playing field significantly. She hadn't expected that, and if she had, she would have combated him with the same strategy she used against Shisui to begin with. He was behind her with little to no warning. She swiped the kunai that was aimed towards her neck away, making sure to keep it a short distance away. Noting that the kunai were the secret to his jutsu, he charged, slashing forward. She dodged, grabbing his arm and shoving him backward with a fist to his midsection. He grunted in pains as he swung a long leg her ways. She blocked the blow, being extremely heavy and pushing her back a few feet. She jumped forward, a kick aiming for his head. The blonde sidestepped before grabbing her leg and throwing the Uchiha female, who responded with a barrage of shuriken his way. He rolled, grabbing the kunai that was plunged into the grass and deflected all of the deadly sharp fragments of metal with the weapon. The cling of metals colliding, ringing out through the field. He went for her again, throwing his kunai. She dodged it and allowed it to land behind her. He teleported to the weapon, and from there he sent a barrage of fists and kicks. The two exchanged attacks for a short while, before they broke off as Izumi kicked Naruto backward. She withdrew a kunai and lunged forward. Naruto, laying on the ground, rolled out of the way. To her surprise, he grabbed her by her arm and brought her down to the floor. She tried to push her weapon towards his throat, a feat which would have been a clear sign that she was victorious. However, that's not the case. With his superior strength, he grabbed the girl's wrists, forcefully pushing them down as he laid neatly on the girl. Her back against the grass as he lay frontwards upon the girl. She couldn't believe it. It had been that easy. She jerked forward in an attempt to escape, but found that the very kunai in her hand was now poking her cheek. She gazed up at the sun-kissed haired shinobi. He was gazing down at her with a stern expression. They stayed in that position for a long term of time, Izumi waiting patiently for him to remove himself, which, unfortunately, wouldn't happen without her intervention. She cleared her throat. Naruto, she began. What? You may remove yourself from me now, you've won. His eyes widen in shock as he flustered red in embarrassment, realizing the position that they were in. Izumi simply raised an eyebrow. He quickly removed himself from her smaller figure. Both now stood. Say what? You won. His blue eyes gleamed with something she couldn't pinpoint. I won. He spoke awe-filled. Yes, that is what I said. She dusted her Anbu uniform off. But, you're Izumi Uchiha. You never lose. She laughed internally. She wished that were true. I've lost to Kakashi-san a large sum of times, in my earlier years. I usually tie with Shisui, albeit. She sighed. You're an exceptional shinobi, Naruto. She spoke wholeheartedly, wishing not to say anything else. But the blonde would have nothing less. Friends? His hand went out towards the Anbu captain. She stared at it, her crimson Sharingan eyes still activated. Come on, it's the least you can do. At least I'm not annoying you with questions from the day before. He had a point there. She didn't like being annoyed with questions. Her hand extended outward, grasping his, and shaking firmly. Don't think I'll ease your workload. A punishment is still a punishment. A small smile plastered its way onto the Uchihas. It went unnoticed by Naruto, but it was in fact present. You're kidding me, goddammit, you gotta be, Shisui inquired. He couldn't believe it. Hell, he refused. They stood outside the main Uchiha house, 30 minutes after the training with Sasuke and Naruto. Do I look like someone to joke, Shisui? She had a good point. Izumi rarely joked, if ever. Actually, he's never heard her crack or laugh at a joke ever. God, these kids, sooner or later they'll make us look like a flock of fluffy bunnies with their skills. She nodded in agreement. It was a quiet and passive day. Beautiful in every sense of the word. The raven-haired female lay in her room, quietly looking into the blue spring sky. Her charcoal eyes blank. It was her day off, evidently. Shisui had been sent off on an emergency Anbu mission which required his specific skill. Which explained why they were not training today. Which reminded her. Both Sasuke and Naruto had made significant progress. Both of which were definitely gaining a new sense of responsibility, and she had successfully helped Naruto develop a new form of his Rasengan. She felt content with her work actually. Naruto had not disappointed her, he had actually defeated her, which was a great accomplishment for any shinobi of this era. But back to her day of. It was her day off and she had absolutely nothing to do. She never really did anything actually. She didn't have a personal life, nor did she have many friends. She did have admirers, but they weren't friends or anyone interesting. She sighed lightly, thinking about her ultimate mission, the one given to her on the behalf of Danzo. He couldn't believe he was doing this. He was crazy. He shook his head, almost walking away and leaving right then and there. He didn't wish to come all the way here just to be turned down, it just wasn't something he'd see as pleasant. However, he didn't see her replying to him with a yes, it was her day off after all. His blue eyes blinked as he sighed, deciding to finally do it. His hand came up as he knocked lightly on the door to the Uchiha head house. He knocked for a couple minutes before stopping and becoming vigilant. He waited, and after a few minutes, was anyone home? Sasuke even, maybe, to explain to him at least that she wasn't home or anything. Or maybe she was ignoring him. He was seconds away from leaving when the door finally opened. His day suddenly brightened up. Beautiful jet black eyes that equally complemented her long charcoal hair. She wore a blue shirt that wore the Uchiha crescent on it. Her eyebrows rose, staring into the blue of Naruto's. They stood there staring at each other for a long instant. "May I help you, Naruto?" inquired Izumi. Why was he here again? What had he wanted to do again? Shit. I know it's your day off and I don't mean to bother you on it, Izumi, but I was wondering if you could help me perfect my new Rasengan. He explained to the girl. That was part of the reason, actually, he just wanted to be around her. Over the time that he'd spent with the Anbu captain, her brother, his best friend and Shisui, Naruto had to admit that he'd developed something a bit more than infatuation. He needed to be around her. He wanted to know more about her personal life and possibly get to know her. He was curious about every aspect of the girl. Especially about the incident a month ago. He couldn't tell the girl 5 years his senior, by all means no. It was well known that Izumi was beautiful, possibly the most beautiful girl in all of the village. That fact alone meant a lot, and if the rumors were true, then she wasn't really interested in those of the opposite, if you would. His mind was brought from his thoughts as she answered quicker than he expected. "It's fine. Actually, I'm not doing anything better and would find it enjoyable to help you with your jutsu." She spoke, her voice sounding like a smooth rhythm to the Uzumaki's ears. He smiled as excitement ran through his body. "All right," he cried, slamming a fist into his palm. It was probably louder than he intended, which would explain the stares he received from inside the Uchiha district. Izumi remained stoic as she walked outside, already fully dressed for training, and signaled for him to lead the way. Naruto, with a cheap grin and a scratch of his head, did so accordingly. Naruto sent his attack into the ground. A large explosion erupted in the training field following said attack. The Junin teleported away, avoiding the effects of his own attack. He landed parallel his kunai, via the Thunder God technique. This was his 4th time showing off his Rasenshuriken, following Izumi's orders to repeat his attack. She watched a safe distance away, her arms wrapped neatly under her chest as she looked on with her usual unreadable expression. He was inhaling and exhaling heavily, as sweat ran like rapid rivers down his face and head. Her current posture and figure didn't help his situation either. Izumi called the Uzumaki over with a hand gesture. He approached her slowly, still feeling a bit overworked from the performance of his most powerful ninjutsu. "Rasenshuriken was it?" she asked when he was a good hearing distance away. "Yeah." He nodded, his mouth moving to the side in a gesture of confusion. "It's definitely a powerful attack, however, it seems rather risky. You having to teleport all the time. It was definitely a risky technique, one that required him to use another to get its full capability." "Yeah, it is," Naruto answered. "Why not throw it?" "What? Throw it? Throw it? I can't just throw the Rasenshuriken." Her eyebrows went up in question. They read, "You're an idiot," as he realized how absolutely stupid he sounded. Could he throw it? It was called the Rasenshuriken. Holy shit. He glanced between his hand, then to Izumi and back to his hand. God damn it, he was an idiot. And she a genius. Why hadn't he thought of that? It was so obvious. He jumped backwards, noticing that her eyes were still glued to him. "Ah, yeah." He scratched his head as he prepared his attack. He concentrated wind charka to his hand, as he prepared to form another one of his attacks. His extremely high chakra levels allowing him to form another one. The giant blue mass of wind in the shape of a shuriken hovered over his palm. "Okay, throw it." His eyes landed upon the forest before him, feet away. He watched as he threw the attack into the abundance of trees. The Rasenshuriken exploded, devastating the trees. It was a definite success. It's much more effective, especially if you're accurate. If you utilize it this way, not only is it that much more devastating, but you won't waste your chakra teleporting away. She spoke, somehow getting behind Naruto without him sensing her. He laughed, his blue eyes gazed upon her features. Her beauty was memorizing. I would have gotten it eventually. I mean, I did make it in the shape of a shuriken. He spoke with a small grin. She simply shook her head at the Junin. She was such a quiet person. Naruto guessed where Sasuke inherited his personality from. He really wanted to ask her about herself and just learn more about her. But how would he initiate in such a conversation? Would you like to spar? He asked without really thinking, wanting some sort of response from her. She stood there for a moment, probably thinking about the proposal. You're not tired? You kidding me? That was just a warm-up. That was a total lie. He was actually pretty tired, but he had nothing to do for the rest of the afternoon. And this was possibly the only way to get to know her better. To think that he would feel this way about Sasuke's sister. Fine. She spoke bluntly. He smiled his signature goofy smile. Yes. Would you like it to attack first, Naruto? Yes. Actually, I would, he yelled as he attacked with great speed, sending his first attack, a punch, in her direction. She dodged the punch, grabbing the Junin by his arm and tossing him over her shoulder. He landed neatly a small distance away. He was already tired. It was definitely going to be harder than he thought. He lay on the ground, his arm forcefully pushed into his upper back and her hand forcefully holding his head down. Izumi had won the spar. Their first spar actually. The fight earlier wasn't a spar. Though she didn't feel as successful considering that the whole entire time he had been sluggish and much less enthusiastic. So she held back, just a little so the spar could last longer. In the end, she still won. Ah, alright, you win, he declared. She released the Uzumaki. She stood, bringing her hand down for him to grab, so she could lift him to his feet. He refused, as he turned onto his remained on the ground. I guess they call you the best for a reason. She shook her head. No, don't be modest. You were tired, it wasn't exactly a fair spar. It became quiet, the sky no longer held the presence of the sun, but instead that of a full moon and the stars beyond. He still laid there almost memorized with the sky. And so she did something he probably would never have expected her to do, she sat down next to him. He almost jumped as the realization hit him, his eyes tracing her figure. She noted. She said nothing, those of both genders usually did that to her. She guessed she must have looked odd to other people. She wasn't the most sociable, so she really didn't know what was acceptable via appearance, nor did she care. So there she sat, with the Uzumaki staring into the dark sky, tracing their eyes upon the infinite stars and the beautiful full moon. They laid for hours, both in respective silence. It was weird, she never exactly spent her days off with someone other than Shisui, and they never exactly did things like this. Except for sparring and training, but that was different. Her eyes glanced from the sky to the man beside her. His sun-kissed hair was darker due to the lack of light, but she could still see his face perfectly. Her eyes traced his lips and finally found its way to his jawline. His jawline was structured in such a way, it resembled that of a Nordic god. It was weird actually, she had never explored or rather investigated his face before. And that day Izumi realized that she really liked Naruto's jawline. Felt normal. Sasuke had to admit. Team 7 together again, just sitting enjoying their little get-together, eating their Naruto's favorite dish at the ramen shop. It was enjoyable. Well, for the most part. There had been a small disturbance. Mainly of a certain Uzumaki and his huge mouth. So the blonde had found himself face first into the ground, which a small bubble-gum-haired demon with green eyes mercilessly shaking him by his collar. Scolding him about. Who knows what. You can't say shit like that and not expect to get hit. No, I'm not small, I'm average size. Oh, he went there. Sasuke kept calm as he watched the exchange, Naruto begging for his life and pledging his apologies. He chose not to say anything about the exchange, wishing not to feel the wrath of the female. It's amazing how quickly he had forgotten how crazy this pink-haired bitch. Emerald green eyes shot into Sasuke's jet black, malicious intent in those orbs. No. There was no way she could know his thoughts. He stared back, refusing to show his true emotions of fear, not breaking his gaze. Albeit, a small dribble of sweat made its way down the side of his face. You have something you want to say, Sasuke? Crazy. No, he replied as smooth as he could. His eyes made way to his best friend, who was still helplessly in her clutches. Naruto mouthed the words, "Help me, please." Sasuke mentally denied his request. The Dobi was on his own. That's not what your facial expression says. How in the could she tell? Really? He was as stoic as a dead door. Knob. And doors can't die. I've been around you Uchihas long enough to pick up on your facial expressions. Was the only thing he could respond with. It's 12:07, and I'd like to enjoy the rest of the afternoon, without an ignorant or stop comments. Sakura rose to her feet, dusting her clothing off. Wait. 12:07. Naruto sprint to his feet, seeming to recover from the brutal attack. Sasuke slammed his palm into his face. Naruto. Man. I'm late. I go around this time every day. Late for what? Sasuke questioned, as Naruto frantically got to his feet and dusted off his orange and black attire. Go where? The bathroom. And with that Sasuke remembered that Sakura was an idiot. He stared the pinkett down. I don't think he meant the bathroom, Sakura. He spoke, as a matter of fact, shaking his head. Well, I don't know, he is sort of doing the pee-pee dance. As much as he hated to admit it, she did have a point. Naruto was currently jumping around in panic, drowning his ramen down in one gulp and getting ready to sprint away. Naruto, wait. Sasuke grabbed him by the wrist, stopping his dash. Just where are you going? The boy's face seemed to react to the question with an abundant amount of emotions, but let's analyze the most prompt one. Panic. Yes, he was panicking. For what reason? That's exactly what Sasuke was trying to figure out. I'm going to see a friend. Don't wait up for me. And, also, could either of you pay for my meal? Alright, thanks. Naruto slipped away, dashing off into the distance, seeming to head in the provided direction of the Uchiha compound, something to note for later. Sasuke had almost forgotten how weird Naruto was. I'm not paying for him, spoke the pink-haired female beside the Uchiha. So, Sasuke was paying for him was all he heard. He was breathing heavy, almost as if he had been running. She had expected him to come. He had done so at the same time every day for the past 2 weeks, even when they weren't exercising his punishment. It was routine by this time, but what she hadn't expected was the blonde boy to ask her if she wished to just walk around the village, with him and hang out. Izumi could have declined. He wouldn't have questioned it, he was the one who requested her regardless, and she wasn't one to socialize, let alone hang out. She could have easily went back to her quarters and returned to her slumber. However, she did quite the opposite. She was unaware of what had possessed her, or what impulse burst through her. But the Uchiha heir had politely accepted his request. Said blonde gave her a cheap smile, a smile that said he had made some sort of huge achievement. She followed him accordingly, allowing him to lead the way out of the Uchiha compound and into the streets of the Leaf Village. It was a bright and sunny spring afternoon, the temperature was perfect, one could say. Villagers and shinobi alike traveled back and forth, their destinations unknown to the blonde and raven-haired pair. This feeling. The 17-year-old beside her spoke. She looked towards his direction, both keeping their pace. Don't you just get this feeling? Walking through this village, and just gazing at the innocence. Charcoal eyes went ahead of her, where a small civilian child and his mother happily sat at a ramen shop. Do you feel it, Izumi? He stopped, his face forming a small friendly smile. She stopped her pace, a few inches ahead of him. The reasonings why this? He pointed towards the ground, but she knew he was implying the village. This is so precious. Every single soul in this village is precious. This is why we try. The female Uchiha blinked, trying her best not to show her awe at his words, which were simple, yet profound. I'm just really trying to understand you a bit more, Izumi. You're so quiet and collective. He scratched the back of his head saying this. The world around Izumi seemed to stop or slow down to a considerable interval. There was so much more to this boy. This boy. Man she had monitored for the majority of her life. She was curious about him. This specimen. She had always been curious, but now it reached uncontainable levels. He seemed to have the heart and soul of fire. He seemed to be such a jester, and at first glance, you wouldn't believe him to the S-class shinobi he was. He never seemed to be defensive, he seemed to walk around as if he completely trusted everyone. As if everyone was his friend. I do feel it, Naruto. It's the feeling that every true shinobi gets at some point or another. She paused. We all get it, it shows our will of fire. They began walking again for a while, the pair quiet for a sum of time. Taking in the scenery of the village, and its inhabitants. So, there's something that's been bugging me, since I first met you. Naruto's voice came awkwardly. She spoke, still keeping to her quiet nature. That day, what were your reasons for pursuing me that day? The question wasn't easy to answer. What could she say? That she'd been monitoring him since she was young and it was her mission to watch him and make sure he was of no threat to the village. Yeah, that would be bad for both of them. I was simply curious. She didn't mean for her answer to come out like that. Actually, she didn't even mean to answer at all. But she sort of spoke before thinking. What? Curious about what? Your training. I was curious about how one of the members of Team 7 trained. And I already know my brother's routine. I was simply interested in yours. It was true to a small extent, so it wasn't exactly a lie. He took this into deep consideration, his hands going into his pockets as they continued their stroll through the village. He didn't respond to her answer, he simply seemed to fall into a deep trance of thought. Izumi chose to not to engage in conversation, she kept her mouth as silent as need be, but she continued to analyze the boy before her. They continued for a few minutes. The glares Izumi received did not go unnoticed by her. Majority of which from that of the male population. She shrugged it off, of course. She cared little about people's insignificant opinions on her. They stopped upon a small ramen shop. He proposed that they get a small meal. She agreed before noting that Naruto had come here on multiple occasions. The Uchiha heir chose not to order anything at all, while Naruto, of course, ordered a bowl of ramen. The clerk making a comment on the lines of, back for seconds. Which did not go unnoticed by the black-haired female. All this time we've trained for the past few weeks and all, but we have never had an actual conversation. Like small talk. Naruto slurped down a trail of noodles. What would you like to talk about, Naruto? Your horrid table manners. She spoke, allowed a small visible grin to fall upon her features. Naruto's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as he scratched the back of his head, his blonde hair parting as he did so. Hey, it's not about how I eat, as long as it gets in, I'm fine. He slurped down another sum of noodles in triumph. But I mean, I know little about you really. Except the stories I hear from Sasuke and almost everyone else. What stories? He devoured the rest of his meal, dumping the bowl of ramen into his mouth like a drain in a bathtub. Stories of how both you and Shisui defeated Orochimaru. How you're the prodigy and genius of our generation. How you became Anbu captain at the age of 13. That you and Anbu Team 1 have completed more successful S-class missions than any team in all the village. He stopped the praise of the Uchiha heir. That's what Sasuke told you. No, that's what everyone has told me. Sasuke's just obsessed with surpassing you and finally beating you in a spar. Izumi laughed in such a way that it could only be considered a giggle. He's close, really. He'll beat me eventually if he plays his cards right. The afternoon was slowly becoming the early evening as the sun's light began to dissipate. Silence followed again between the two. It was a content silence, albeit opposed to an awkward one. How'd you get that bruise above your eye? Were you training before coming to my house? Izumi surprisingly initiated conversation. She herself not understanding what pushed her to such a length. It was unlike the usually impassive female. The question seemed to crash into the boy like a brick wall. His eyes widening as he sat awkwardly in his seat. Yeah, you can say that. He scratched the back of his head and Izumi instantly knew he was lying. It was this day that Izumi realized that she was truly curious. Nice. The afternoon had been nice, every aspect of the word totally different from the shell she had been earlier. She enjoyed her time with the Uzumaki. He had politely asked to walk her home, which she countered with her own polite decline. But he was persistent and eventually ended up dropping her off home. She didn't argue with it. Her day had been interesting. However, responsibilities soon found their way back towards the heir's throat. Izumi. Came the stoic and demanding voice that she had hoped to avoid for a while. There was no running. Father. We need to talk, immediately. Naruto walked back home, a shadow of contentment over him. He slowly strolled to his apartment, thinking about the events that had transpired earlier. He really believed he was making progress with her. She was such a mystery, she was just perfect in every aspect. Her beauty and just her nature in general, he was truly infatuated with her. His thoughts seemed to be interrupted, as a cold shiver ran down his spine. It was like a sixth sense, the sense when you knew someone or something was following you. His hands immediately made its way towards his pouch, unleashing a kunai. A warm hand found its way towards his wrist, clasping it firmly and preventing it from moving any further. Whoa, there tiger, I'm not gonna hurt you, came the familiar voice of the spiky-haired Uchiha. He released Naruto from his grip, allowing the 17-year-old to incline himself in Shisui's direction. Shit, man, I was about to stab the out of you. What gives? Shisui shook his head. Oh, I've just been around Yano, jumping around checking out a few women and all. Spoke a confident Shisui. Naruto rolled his eyes at one of the people in charge of his punishment. And? Naruto retorted. Well, I don't know. While traveling from house to house checking out the variety of beautiful girls, you tend to see shit from time to time. And what I've seen today has really raised my interest. Naruto gulped. His eyes widened. Shit. You saw me get my beaten by Sakura, didn't you? Hey, she's strong as. And eye for on, he was cut off. No, I wasn't talking about that at all, though I did see her beat the bricks off of you, but that's beside the point. I saw you and Izumi together, the entire day. Oh, that was worse. Friends can't just hang out. What is it that you need, father? Her voice hinted annoyance, much more than the normal Uchiha standards. This didn't go unnoticed by the clan leader. A man can't have a conversation with his only daughter. You'd want to have a casual conversation with me. The man was silent, she answered for him. Of course not, you wish to speak to me about clan matters. But as I have informed you, I have been very busy with my work in the Anbu. I'm aware, your time in Anbu has made it difficult to find a suitable betrothed. Oh, how she truly hated his persistence. Sure, it was wrong of her to avoid her clan duties, but she wasn't ready to get engaged, and start a relationship, let alone get married. She didn't want to hear this. Her bed called her, and she would rather compile her thoughts alone than speak with the Uchiha leader. Which is exactly why I have to tell you that if you do not find someone favorable, then I'll have no choice but to prepare for an arranged marriage. You're 21 years of age, that is way past the age that the next heir is supposed to be married. Her ears perked up to his words. The horrible truth piercing through her, the reality of what he spoke wrapping around her throat. Excuse me. Her voice seeming to come out smooth, but a hint of surprise spewing. You heard me. Do not play stupid. I don't wish to do this, but you're giving me no choice. She shook her head. My work as a shinobi takes priority over the clan, you'll have to wait. There is no argument, you have a year. 1 whole year, that's more than enough time to find someone. The clan elders have become restless, and if you do not have someone by the time the year's up, we will choose for you. The girl sighed, she couldn't argue with him, it was a fair arrangement. But the fact that she was being forced to find someone to engage in a relationship was irritating. At least, she could make the choice between who she would spend her life with. Though the thought of becoming the clan head was rather unappealing to her. She left him, heading to her room. God, the exact conversation she had been trying to avoid had just taken place. 1 year. 1 year to find a significant other. That didn't seem hard. It shouldn't be hard at all. Though she wasn't sure of anyone who would be interested in her. But it wasn't simply about who would be interested, there were a few standards said person would have to size up to. For one, he had to be a shinobi, someone powerful enough to combat her in battle. He had to be intelligent, critical thinking skills, and just simply intellectual. The girl plopped down on her bed, resting as she eased up a bit. She guessed he had to be attractive too. Though she didn't judge people solely based on their appearance, though physical attraction would be nice. Yes, that's basically it. She didn't exactly want anyone clingy, that would be rather annoying. Also, a personality that would intrigue her. She clicked her tongue, unusual for the girl. This would be a difficult task. An explosion rang out through the forest. A large crater forming from the sudden combustion. A gust of wind smashing into the rocks surrounding the blast radius, a dark smoke splashing over the area. Oh, how did I get myself paired with you? Can't handle my art, yeah. Shark. Those Suna bastards didn't stand a chance. Yeah, and now your huge explosive bang is going to bring the whole damn village on us. I say bring it on, I say shut your mouth, and let's get the moving. The others are waiting. The blue shark liked being spat at his stupid blonde teammate. The kid was definitely the kind to get himself killed. He nudged him forward. Yeah, Konoha awaits the Akatsuki. He geared, his bird-like creature sweeping down and allowing both of them to board. It's rare that the Akatsuki sends out invitations, with that the bird shot off into the sky, flying towards their destination. Konoha. Naruto shook his head, nodding now. That's not necessary, I don't need you help. Shisui crossed his arms, the Anbu's eyebrows raised as he glared at Naruto with a look that said, really? Really? Man, I'm sort of a ladies' man. Naruto boasted, his words a mist of lies. For some reason, I almost don't believe you. Well, believe it, he resurrected his original slogan from his childhood. Blue eyes sparkling, as he smiled from eye to eye. The curly-haired Uchiha cleared his throat. Even so, Izumi isn't just simply any girl, you can just bag. She's much more complicated. I know that already. And so you admit to trying to bag my cousin. He stepped back, realizing his mistake. Why was his mouth so big? Okay, yeah, I like Izumi, but she doesn't seem like the type of girl to date anyone. Shisui chuckled deeply. That's why you need me. Her best friend is a wingman, you got an inside man. Naruto became skeptical, his hands at his side. He didn't exactly know how he should answer his punisher. Well. He stopped, his statement, the blonde scratching his head. He was considering it, his proposal was extremely tempting. Look, I'm usually chasing away from the girl. Do you know how many fanboys she has? An uncountable amount, that's for sure. The fact that I'm allowing you to pursue her, let alone helping you do so, should be considered an honor. So pick wisely. Okay, I guess if you put it that way. No, not you guess. Answer properly. The charcoal-haired man shook his head, smacking the 17-year-old blonde on the side of the head. Ow. Naruto scratched the back of his head. What was he getting himself into? Suddenly he wondered if the whole thing was worth it. You hear me, bro? Yeah. The blonde cleared his throat. Yes, I would like your help, Shisui. The two began to walk, Naruto heading into the direction of his home, Shisui following slightly behind. This works out for all of us as I said. But you're going to have to do everything I say. That didn't sound good. Shisui was known to be rather irrational. Much like himself. Maybe even more irrational. Even more so, doing everything Shisui said didn't seem to be the right choice. Then again, Naruto didn't make many rational decisions. Why not? Great, then my lesson begins now. First things first, you are not my cousin. His blunt statement stabbing the boy, taking him by surprise, and with that Naruto knew he should have never accepted to his terms. The next morning, Izumi was in front of Tsunade, her Anbu mask laying lightly on her face, as Anbu Squad 1 was informed of the assignment, this mainly dealing with the Chunin exams that would be taking place this week. They were to be her, as you could say, bodyguards for the finals. Not that she needed it. Though still, they would stick to her like white one rice, by her side monitoring her every move, surveying the area. Just simply keeping things safe. Of course, this will be considered an S-ranked mission, despite the obvious ease of said assignment, she explained. Her mind, unusually swirled away from the Godime's words, she had done similar missions like this before, it was simple, to say the least. Her mind stuck on the ultimatum her father had given her. He was right, she did need to get to her responsibilities, her clan needed her and she was attempting to avoid passing on the main family bloodline. She understood his disapproval and distaste with being the clan head. But it was simply she knew she wouldn't enjoy it. To be the leader of the clan and to bear the future children. The theme of this exam is teamwork, you pass as a team, you fail as a team. The pressure of having the future of the clan in her hands wasn't the issue, Izumi just simply didn't want the responsibility. Not that she wasn't fit enough, she just didn't feel as if she'd enjoy it. But it wasn't about enjoying her time as leader. No. By all means, that's what made her selfish. It was about her successfully living up to her responsibilities. Yes, she would hate it, but she had to endure nonetheless. Which brought up the other dilemma. Finding a mate for herself, it didn't seem possible to the girl. No one seemed to be of any interest to her. Well, except Naruto. Her eyes unintentionally widened at that thought. Naruto. The best friend and teammate of Sasuke. The boy she had surveyed for the majority of her Anbu career. The container of the Kyuubi fox spirit. She had considered his name first out of any of the options she had. How weird. He seemed to be on her mind more than the girl wanted to admit. Izumi, are you paying attention? Yes, Hokage-sama. She hadn't been whatsoever. Shisui snickered at this, the laughter soft but not inaudible to the Hokage. Do you find this funny, Shisui? Tsunade attacked Shisui with her words. Why? Yes, Hokage-sama. Extremely funny. He retorted, his voice smart and rebellious. Izumi glared at Shisui, her Sharingan activating, which should have been enough to tell her cousin to shut his mouth. Neji's face was unchanged, and Shizune glared also. And you know what else is extremely funny? The scare tactic didn't work on the Genjutsu master, unfortunately. What? Hokage-sama. 1 month, academy training. Shisui fell silent at the threat. Izumi knew the man wasn't very good with children. He absolutely hated them actually. Which probably explained why he didn't have any. Now, I don't think any more explanation is needed for this particular mission. It's simple enough. Now go. She dismissed them all with her hand, obviously not in the best of moods. Izumi, I heard about what old Fugaku's doing. He decided to get things rolling, his plan burning like a small flame in a forest. From who? They jumped from the rooftop of an apartment building, landing softly on small restaurant before jumping to the next and repeating. Unlike you, I actually attend the clan meetings. He explained to her. The Uchiha heir seemed to be disinterested. Ah, he was making such a fuss about it. You sure you're not interested? He knew how to speak the dialect of his own people, it was his own people after all. I don't wish to ponder on it for so long, was her response. But you do in fact need to get married soon, a year can go by faster than you think. Shisui smirked slightly, observing her verbal response. Maybe, you should start looking for someone to start a relationship with. Eventually, they continued their slow movement to the Uchiha compound. I can help you with that, Izumi. Now he had her full attention. So she did care more than she had first let on. Let me ask you a question. Go on. Do you have anyone who could possibly be fit for you? He inquired, waiting for her response. She remained silent. A long moment passed as Shisui anxiously awaited her response. He wanted her to say his name, it would make things so much easier and his plan would be perfectly executed. Shisui the matchmaker. He waited a bit longer, noting the girl to be in a small stream of thought. The genius of the village was currently contemplating what to say. She was obviously indecisive, which could be both good and bad, simultaneously. Did you forget about the question, already? No. Then, who do you think? He asked again, the rough thumping of their feet hitting the rooftop the only sound emitted as they stopped on said roof. She was silent again, her eyes filled with an allure of thought. It was as if she were in a trance. Shisui was curious as to what her reply could possibly be. Izumi wasn't one to tell what was on her mind so easily, he kept in mind. She sighed, finally choosing to speak. I don't know honestly. Her words were finally spoken. Shisui of the body flicker shook his head, not receiving the results he wanted. Really all that build up? Just to tell me, you don't know. She was quiet, for an interval of time, almost motionless at the same time. Before, without warning, she took off. Jumping to the next rooftop without Shisui. He was so close. It was a damn shame, he had almost gotten answers from Izumi so easily. Jumped off the roof heading in her direction. God, this was going to be more annoying than he thought. She never really found herself strolling through the village. But, she did so when she had nothing better to do and didn't feel the need to train. It was a much needed walk, she needed a clear and sound mind. The village was dark, the atmosphere lacking the light of the sun, so she was out pretty early, just wondering. It was unusual for the girl, she never had an issue that bothered her to this extent, this mainly due to the fact that she was usually in control of her mind and emotions. Truthfully, the Uchiha heir had no idea what she was going to do about the ultimatum her father had placed on her. She was grateful that he had been generous enough to give her a year, but that didn't seem like enough time for her. She didn't know how to go about dating and certainly wouldn't date someone so easily. Did she even feel any attraction towards anyone? The question remained an enigma as the girl continued to walk. Maybe she was taking things out of proportion, maybe she shouldn't worry about anything and possibly just let life play out. There were hundreds of thousands of people in this village, she could at least find one significant other. They would, of course, have to prove themselves worthy, but nonetheless it was probable that she would find one. Shisui's questions earlier this week were unusual, he never exactly seemed interested in her love life. Her non-existent one at that. A familiar presence directly behind her jogged her from her thoughts. The girl twirled around on her heels, her eyes greeting the one eye of the white-haired copy ninja. Yo! He greeted coolly. Kakashi-senpai. Come on now, I thought we were past formalities, I'm no longer your captain after all. His free eye never left that of his infamous book. My apologies, of course. A small hum almost inaudible emanated from his throat. So, what are you doing out at this early in the morning, Izumi? He rubbed his mask-covered nose before flipping to another page. It was true, He never seemed very interested in anything, well, except that book of his. Nothing, in particular, I just needed to clear my mind. Ah, I thought I was just been a bit paranoid, you do seem a bit abnormal, unnerved even. So, maybe you could tell your old captain what's wrong. A small smile barely visible through the dark morning sky danced on her lips. He could tell there was a small storm brewing within the girl. Kakashi was someone she could relate to. He was calm, collective, intelligent, and down-to-earth shinobi. He'd been on Anbu just as her, even being the girl's captain on Team RO. They both were prodigies and both had entered Anbu at a very tender age. She'd been on many missions with Kakashi, the two were rather close, believe it or not. My issues are trivial, honestly, she confessed. Then you'd have no problem sharing them, then. He turned a page again. She sighed. Speaking about something that was pestering her might actually help lessen the weight. I've been given an ultimatum by my father. She paused for a short moment. Regarding the fact that I have yet to find a suitable betrothed. I have to find someone to pursue within a year, or else he'll find someone for me. It was at this moment that the former Anbu captain brought his lazy attention towards that of Izumi. Oh, you're 21 now, correct? Boy, how time flies. He gazed up to the sky for a second, almost in a short gaze of nostalgia. He returned his stare. You are the clan heir after all, it's something that's expected of you. And with that said, I don't believe it'd be too much trouble for you to find a lover. He clicked his tongue, as he closed his book and placed it gently in his pouch. But, then again, you don't seem to be the type of person who'd enjoy dating. No, I wouldn't mind it, it's my duty as heir. It's just simply picking the right person. She answered simply. I do not know where to begin. She didn't exactly have any options at the moment. I'm not the person to really come to for relationship advice. That's right, Kakashi's been single for as long as she could remember. He didn't exactly seem like he was interested in finding someone. However, I'm sure you can find someone within a year. A year is plenty of time. Don't stress over it, really, it won't do you any good, just live life as you normally would. That seemed rational. Why hadn't she thought of that herself? And she was supposed to be the genius of her generation. It seems difficult. I've never seen anyone in that way prior. Even if I did, I have no idea where to initiate. He chuckled softly, his eye almost sparkling in the dark. She assumed he was smiling under that mask, the situation apparently amusing to the elder man. It's not something that you learn to do, it just seems to happen. With that, he withdrew his book again, beginning to engage in reading from a folded page. It's spontaneous. She knew the answer to that question and almost regretted asking it. You really know little about relationships. The white-haired man averted his eyes toward the dark-haired girls. She couldn't deny it. The topic was never anything she cared for in the past. She had ignored anything dealing with such normalcy up until now. It's ironic how innocent our most elite shinobi actually is. He let a soft chuckle escape his mask-covered lips. Hilariously ironic. She did see the humor. Izumi could kill a man with her bare hands alone in more than 150 ways and counting. But she'd never dated anyone or been intimate with someone of the same or different. She hadn't even had her first kiss yet. But she digressed. She would take his advice, live life as normally as possible, and hopefully, someone compatible will present themselves. It was quiet, the only audible noise being that of the gentle wind, successfully blowing the girl's long hair that was kept in a neat ponytail. Thank you, Kakashi. She gave her gratitude, genuinely thankful for his advice. Anytime. He paused. Izumi watched as something unreadable passed through his eyes. He wished to speak more, so she kept her eyes on his one. But I'm curious, it seems you've taken an interest into a certain former blonde student of mine. More than that surveillance mission you've had since my heyday. She nodded in confirmation. It would seem that both Naruto and my brother got themselves in a bit of trouble with the Godime. I'm simply enforcing their punishment. Which isn't much of a punishment if you ask me, it's actually been pretty productive for the two. Ah, that explains it, those idiots, he answered nonchalantly. So, what has you wandering so early this morning, Kakashi? The Junin shrugged. Just getting lost on the road of life. Of course. She answered, almost laughing at his response, just the typical Kakashi Hatake. Only Naruto arrived in the warm afternoon. She barely blocked a well-aimed kick that had been directed towards her face. The blonde shinobi was relentless. She had been on the defensive the whole entire spar. His movements were fast and he didn't seem to tire. So she was blocking and avoiding all his attacks as he attempted to weaken her defense. He'd be successful too if she allowed him to continue his bombardment. He sent a jab that would have definitely been devastated if she hadn't ducked. With that, she found an opening and used it to her advantage, as she took to the ground and used her leg to sweep the boy from his feet. He fell on his back but was quick to recover back to his feet. His form was impressive and seemed to improve each time they spared. He withdrew a kunai and slashed at the girl, barely missing her face and cutting a few strands of her black hair. She replied with her own kunai, as she blocked his attack, before countering with her own. The two exchanged blows, though neither were able to land significant damage. Their movements were fluent and corresponded with each other, so much that it almost looked as if they were dancing. An eloquent and sophisticated dance that had no music except the beatings of their hearts and the sounds of their breathing. They watched and analyzed each other's movements like a vigilante snapping turtle waiting for the right moment to strike, obtaining its prey. Except the two were currently in movement as they attack and avoid each's own attack, again and again. It finally ended with Naruto's face in the ground, a sharp kunai placed gently at his throat, as she held a knee forcefully on his spine. I think I've won this one, Naruto. A laugh emanated from his throat. The blonde moved his face from the grass and more towards the left to incline his blue eyes with her black ones. I don't think so. Suddenly she felt a sharp metal press against her own throat, her black eyes widened. I think we can call this one a draw. He somewhere he had summoned a shadow clone to aid him. It had to have been sometime in the beginning of the spar. She would have caught it if she had activated her Sharingan for this spar, but regardless he gets a draw. Fair enough. She released the boy as he allowed his clone to disappear in a cloud of smoke. We should rest for a while. She instructed, taking a seat on the grass, laying back and not caring that her hair would get dirty. Naruto took a seat beside her, his expression that of the most optimistic individual she'd seen, well, ever. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Naruto stood to his feet. Izumi watched him fiddle through his orange pants, before checking his green shinobi vest. Here it is. Here was what. She continued to watch curiously, as the boy pulled out what appeared to be a button pin with the Uchiha insignia on it. A button pin. Yeah, no, it isn't much and I'll understand if you don't wish to take it. But it's my gift to you. I even got my own with the Uzumaki clan signature, but it's back at home. She scratched his head as expected. He'd gotten her a button pin. When was the last time she'd ever received a gift from someone? She had a faint memory of Sasuke giving her something years ago, however otherwise she couldn't seem to remember much. It was thoughtful, in all honesty, it was an absolute gesture of good intentions. She put her hand out. His eyes widened in glee as he came forward and placed it in her hand. That was thoughtful of you, Naruto. Thank you. It was delightful to be around him. He was such a vibrant and optimistic individual. Suddenly something clicked in her head. This young man before her was very interesting indeed, of which she'd known for the majority of her life. Albeit younger than her, in that moment, Izumi realized that she liked the Uzumaki. She had been spending a large sum of time with him, and he was an excellent shinobi. So considering him as a candidate didn't seem far-fetched. But, in a relationship, both parties had to have a mutual understanding for the damn relationship to work. Which brings up the question. Did he possibly like her? His gestures did seem rather friendly, but nothing more than innocent. And even if he did like her, what if it were nothing more than infatuation? It seemed as if only time would tell, but she kept Naruto as a candidate. Night had finally arrived. It wasn't hard to find the two, despite the dark night atmosphere, though he assumed they wanted to be found. That was fine though, because finally after a whole entire day of surveillance and vigilance they'd given away their position. He was separated from the rest of the shinobi on the manhunt. He almost jumped in glee when he realized he was the first to spot them. Shisui dropped to the forest floor, his Sharingan blazing as she stared at the two men before him. The two were still, and not at all surprised to see the Anbu operative in front of them. This slightly made Shisui cautious. The first man was tall, possibly the tallest person he'd seen in a while. But that wasn't his most striking feature. Which struck Shisui the most as strange was his pale blue skin and shark-like features, including his canine teeth which were currently smiling heavily at the Uchiha. He knew this man from the bingo books. His eyes then fell on the blonde dude to the pale man's left. He too had a sadistic smile, his eye covered by long blonde hair that almost made the guy look feminine. His identity was unknown, however. From the dark robes that had small red clouds littered on them, he could only assume that they were members of the criminal organization, Akatsuki. He withdrew his katana, the familiar sound of the blade being unleashed echoing throughout the woods. His crimson-red eyes glowed through the darkness, as he pointed his weapon as he allowed flames to ignite, enhancing the sword's effective power. Akatsuki, it's been a while since we've seen any of you guys. Finally got over Team 7 killing that little puppet master of yours. He clicked his tongue. Hey Kisame, let me kill this bastard, yeah. Kisame, one of the former 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, looked Shisui over from head to toe. The Anbu operative who didn't have his uniform on today narrowed his eyes. Sure thing kid, I guess we won't be going anywhere with him in the way, but be cautious. This isn't just any shinobi. His smile never left his pale shark face. Shisui Uchiha, of the body flicker, no less. Don't take him lightly. He smiled, his arrogance getting the better of him. Why not come at me at the same time? I can wipe the floor with both of ya. He closed his eyes saying this. The blue-skinned shark man seemed to notice his action. Deidara, don't look him in the eye, you'll be trapped in his genjutsu and you'd never even know it. His eyes finally opened, revealing his Mangekyo Sharingan. He hoped to dispose of them quickly and effectively before reinforcements arrive anyway. I'll take this one actually Deidara, your attacks seem to be much more obvious. The blonde looked at him defiantly, before just simply muttering. Fine. Shisui held his katana steady, analyzing the tall shark man, his Akatsuki cloak blowing in the wind. He grabbed his sword. I suppose that's the blade, Sharkskin. Oh, so you've done your research, I'm flattered. He unleashed his sword, the wrapped legendary weapon crashing into the ground with its heavy weight, crushing the grassy floor below. You'd be surprised. He said, then a giant shot of water in the shape of a shark came from the Rouge Shinobi. Shisui responded quickly, performing the specific hand signals in an instant, releasing his fireball jutsu with his lips. The two collided, extinguishing each other when doing so. Sharkskin suddenly came forward. Shisui jumped backward, dodging the blade that would not only shred his skin but also depleted him of chakra. He slashed his flaming blade, aiming high for Kisami's head. The large shinobi avoided the attack despite his huge figure. He was a powerhouse. His attacks were slow, but one hit would be devastating. Shisui teleported with his signature body flicker technique, finding himself behind Kisame. The Akatsuki member turned around, surprise in his dark eyes, possibly at the speed of his jutsu. His blade came down with a swift thrust, however, it never connected. The Anbu operative had almost forgotten that he wasn't only fighting Kisame. Regardless of what they've stated, otherwise, their words were not creditable. Out of the corner of his eye, he'd caught the glimpse of a small white bird flying in his direction. He had seconds to escape as he jumped away. As the explosion rippled through the village outskirts with a bang, he almost cursed when he felt the burning sensation throughout his chest and abdominal area. Shit. He grunted as the force pushing the shinobi onto his back. His clothing burning away as a portion of the explosion reached him. That almost hit me. Deidara, what were you thinking? He heard their voices argue. Shit. I saved you, didn't I? He'd been a bit too hasty, maybe even arrogant. Maybe he had undermined their abilities. The battle had turned in their favor pretty quickly. Although, he was sure it was already in their shit. He recovered to his feet, well more like he attempted to. He found himself falling back to the grassy floor, as pain shot through his leg. He searched his leg for the answer to his dilemma, a small fragment of metal lodged in his right calf. His chest felt as if acid had been spilled all over it. He wasn't all that dangerous. Look at him, he can barely stand, yeah. But now the village knows we're here. There's probably a squad of those bastards already heading in our direction. He gazed up towards the approaching ninja, Kisame on the ground, and the supposed Deidara flying on a rather large bird-looking figure. My art can take on 100 shinobi. I guess it can't be helped. Let's just kill the bastard, anyhow. No, he wouldn't be defeated that easy. He wasn't Shisui of the body flicker for no reason. He was an elite shinobi, one of the most elite the village had to offer. He grabbed his katana that had landed a short distance away, gripping the sword with his burnt right hand. He had nothing to lose really. He smiled as he performed his signature jutsu, as the familiar tug of his body teleporting towards the position of the blonde. In an instant, with the speed that would make the fourth Hokage himself proud, Shisui was on the blonde ninja's bird, behind him pointing his now fireless sword at the shinobi. Shit, you're behind me, you sure are fast. But it's nothing compared to my art. Their eyes met blue and crimson both respectively. The Anbu member smiled. He watched Deidara slam his hands into his pouch before throwing it at Shisui. A large white centipede wrapped around the genjutsu master. Deidara abandoned his bird as he jumped down back towards the forest floor. True art is spontaneous. It only lasts for an instant. Art is explosive. Wait, Deidara. The blonde's worst and most fatal mistake of his life had just been made. The moment he looked into Shisui's eyes, his fate was sealed, casting a genjutsu that reflected his own explosive clay creature on Deidara. Bang! The explosion rang out below the clay bird, which detonated somewhere towards the ground. The shinobi had ultimately, albeit mistakenly, killed himself. He fell as the solid bird disappeared. He fell but not before throwing his katana directly at the other Akatsuki member. Shisui hit the floor with a thud, slamming onto his back and grunting in pain as he bit his tongue in an attempt to muffle his yells. He watched Kisame block the attack with his sword sharkskin, the katana lodging into the grass floor. He stared at the sword, with a fixed and steady gaze. Come on, man, he muttered. You know, Sasori always said he was the type to die young. The remaining Akatsuki members didn't really seem all that sympathetic for his partner. He wasn't lying. The idiot didn't heed my warning. I think I'll take my leave, but I do have one request of you. Kisame bent down so that he was eye level with Shisui. He made sure to avoid any eye contact, so to keep himself safe from the devastating Koto Amatsukami, of which he'd spared the latter dead individual of such torture. You think I'll just let you leave? Apparently, Kisame didn't even acknowledge the threat. You're lucky that the death of a certain partner of mine has made things a bit more complicated. So I'm counting on you to relay this message to that captain of yours. Akatsuki has taken an interest in her, and we'd like to hear from her soon. What for, is irrelevant. He chuckled. Captain Izumi, what did Akatsuki want with his dear little cousin? He cupped his lip. That, you can't have my cousin. Don't tell me you guys came all the way over here with a stank-stand attitude just for my cousin. The man known as the tailless-tailed beast smiled. Ah, I'm going to be a tad bit lonely without the obnoxious bozo, always yapping off about his art. he'd ignored him entirely. With those words, reinforcements arrived. A 5-man squad of Anbu appeared suddenly, standing in the space between Shisui and Kisame. It took them long enough. See this, the Akatsuki member took to the skies, dashing to the treetops and making his leave. After him, I'll bring Shisui to the closest hospital. Hi. The rest of the team followed pursuit, leaving the 2 shinobi alone. Nice of you to finally come, Akatsuki. They're back. He gave his gratitude towards the obvious captain of the squad. His mask, a bunny mask with purple almost lightning-like curves rippling down the middle, were of such he'd never seen before. Root. That wasn't good. Akatsuki. My men will handle that. Of course. He pushed himself to his knees. Took you guys long enough. A cool wind blew, cooling Shisui's face, the night air cool almost enough to make him shiver. Yes, almost, not enough. That's the thing, it wasn't enough, but you know Shisui did have enough of distrust, betrayal, danger. His eyes widened when suddenly a squad of 10 root shinobi appeared before him. He wouldn't have been surprised if this was Danzo's doing. What's the meaning of this? He knew the bastard was crazy, sick even. But this was a whole new level. This was treachery. No one responded. Well, no one responded with words at least. Each of the shinobi had massed in force and undoubtedly wished to terminate Shisui. All for one shinobi. There was little time to react when they blasted their own fireball jutsu at the ninja on his knees. He cursed Danzo internally as he quickly executed the proper hand signs. Flames escaped his mouth, responding to all of their attacks. He knew it wasn't strong enough to block them, and there were too many for him to combat head to head, at least in his current state. So, when the attacks intercepted in each other, he disappeared with the body flicker jutsu, escaping the shinobi and landing in a tree branch far off in the distance. Damn bastard. He muttered, as he fell on the branch, feeling the wound in her leg. Shisui should have gone all out from the beginning. Did he truly think he'd get away with something as sinister as that? He jumped from the tree suddenly, as a kunai hit the spot her had been moments ago. He jumped from the tree, landing on his legs. Pain shot through them, life acid devouring his leg, as he withdrew his own kunai. A swarm of kunai and shuriken came his way. He blocked each with the familiar sound of metal clanging and sparks. Just jumped back, again forcing himself to land on his right leg, barely dodged 2 shuriken, the metal ripping through his flesh as blood began to leak from his right arm. The 3 root ninja came forward at great speed. Shisui went on the defensive. Blocking a swift kick from one of the 3 before pushing him back with a kick of his own, another root member's sword slashed at Shisui. He caught the sword in between his hands just in time. The blade was inches from his face. Shit. A rock-hard fist connected with his face, sending him backward, his back hitting the grassy ground hard. The situation was dire. He found himself exhausted and depleted of chakra, and now he was on the ground and basically defenseless. Shisui Uchiha, consider yourself terminated. Shame, it's such a waste of talent and skill. The root member he had inflicted a kick on spoke, now pointing a katana at the Uchiha's throat. You too, you're a disgrace to this village. He shot with venom. All of you, and Danzo. Right, let us end this, the root member said, his men side by side. They nodded in confirmation. The spiky-haired man accepted his fate. He would meet death head-on with no fear. The man refused to look Shisui in his eyes. Either if it were from fear of his Sharingan or from his own dismay with killing a shinobi from his own village, the man would look at the dirt beneath him. The sword grazed his neck. He closed his eyes, not wanting to see the blade that would take his life. A blood-gargling yell was released from the man, as Shisui felt a smoldering heat pass by his side. What? He opened his eyes, as 2 More's shouts of dismay were released. The sword that was meant to kill him lay at the ground, but the root member was gone. A figure appeared in front of him. Her familiar features sent waves of relief through him. Finally, he could relax. Shisui, Izumi yelled, holding him as he felt his body giving into unconsciousness. He'd lost a lot of blood. The Akatsuki, they're back. Danzo. Root. With those words his eyes saw nothing but darkness. She grabbed her cousin, placing him over her shoulder and teleporting to the village. There was no time to lose and no time to waste. She had saw what had happened. The minimal amount of what had occurred, but, nonetheless, she'd seen Danzo's Root attack her cousin. It was treasonous and disgusting. How could someone dare call themselves a shinobi and attempt to kill one of their fellow ninja? They reached the top of the closest hospital. At this she dropped to the ground level of the building before entering. Izumi-san, the pink-haired medic ninja and apprentice of the Godime, questioned as the Uchiha burst through the doors. She gazed at Izumi with skeptical eyes before she saw an unconscious Shisui. She had a cup of tea in her hand, of which she immediately dropped when she saw his condition. Help! Izumi ordered simply. What happened to him? The pinkette questioned. He was attacked. She wished to be blunt as possible. She needed to report to the Hokage before anyone else. Izumi placed him flat on his back. Sakura unleashed a kunai, cutting off Shisui's civilian Uchiha shirt, as she instantly began feeding his body with healing chakra, green aura surrounding her hands and his body. It was a long moment of waiting as the pink-haired medic did her thing. Well, it's nothing too serious. But his skin is severely burnt, he's covered from chest to toe in lacerations, and he's lost quite some blood. More medics arrived as Sakura stood to her feet. They took Shisui on a stretcher and in a quick pace took him into the inners of the hospital. He'll be alright, Uchiha-san. She nodded, before exiting the hospital. She knew it looked indifferent just leaving without informing where she was headed, but the Hokage needed to be informed immediately. We should have seen this coming. Danzo is the absolute definition of an opportunist. Izumi listened to the Hokage's words. Her fist had slammed down on her desk, causing it to smash into two different pieces. The bastard, and the Akatsuki. Before the Chunin exams. She didn't seem to care for the papers and the scrolls that were now everywhere. Izumi, your team is being removed from your current mission during the Chunin exams. I have an assignment for you. Tsunade stood from her chair, and stepped over the rubble that was once her desk. We'll worry about Danzo later. I have him under 24-hour surveillance for now. But right now, we need to gain more information on the Akatsuki. I'm sending you to find Jiraiya, who of which has been collecting data on Akatsuki for quite some time. Inform him that he is to return to the village immediately. His information is extremely vital. Tsunade explained, placing her hands behind her back as she gazed upon the night sky. She was in deep thought, probably pondering the possible downfall of the village through both the efforts of Akatsuki and Danzo. This mission is effective immediately. Hi. She answered, bowing. The heiress prepared to leave the Hokage's office when suddenly she realized an opportunity. Hokage-sama. Yes. The blonde-haired Hokage turned to face Izumi. May I make a suggestion for a shinobi to accompany me on my assignment? Who? Naruto Uzumaki. She stated naturally. Yes, was doing this for selfish reasons. One of those reasons were quite unusual considering that she was usually a loner. But, she wished to have his company. Yes, extremely selfish, but she enjoyed his optimism, and even though she had selfish reasons for bringing him, she also had other reasons. Naruto, why do you wish to bring Naruto? The Sannin inclined her head with one of her most powerful shinobi, a stare of pure curiosity embedded in her chestnut eyes. He's still under my jurisdiction. He's a very acceptable shinobi. His mastery of the Toad Sage would be very convenient in finding Jiraiya. And not only that, the two are indeed rather close. His presence would benefit the outcome and effectiveness of the mission, she explained, keeping her eyes on the Hokages. She waited for the woman's response. She was quiet, a bit more quiet than Izumi had expected. She walked back to her chair, stepping over the broken desk and papers. Fine. She answered. Bring him to me, now. She almost smiled when she heard the Godime's answer.